A wick leaned, listening. A razor laid its clean line across the cloth and learned a darker grammar from the smell of oil. The bed's posts held their breath as if walnut could pray without sound. Before we step inside this story, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what is the time there right now, because we want to know how fast our story has to reach you. The window did not blink. The door remembered its hinge and agreed to be still, while iron considered the next soft country, and the room gathered a patient breath the way a ledger gathers names. Oil moved without shine. The ground at the step lifted, took one footfall, and laid it down where rain would not argue. Silence was not absence. It was labor, smooth and careful, pressing the boards flat so a passage could be made without a sound to betray it. The lamp's small flame lowered, then steadied. A clerk at its post, writing light in smoke. The cloth accepted a new office without boast. The hinge, taut with oil, refused every complaint it knew. The room learned the names without speaking them. Breath was counted softly, and the count did not break. The ground remembered and kept its page closed. This place is a book first and a dwelling after. Ink practices ownership in straight lines, the iron pen carving reins into breath. Keys at the mistress's waist clink like coins that never change hands. The overseer's arithmetic turns bodies into rows and rows into obedience, and the page approves by staying clean. New Orleans taught the parish to keep receipts for people and punishments. The lesson stayed when shutters closed and the river forgot to look up from its trade. Mercy here is measured, not felt. Windows count footsteps without showing their sums. Oil coaches hinges into a softer dialect, so doors can forget their old complaints. Packed earth at the threshold keeps a ledger without ink. It knows who crossed and who turned back, and it keeps its record to itself. In such rooms, stillness becomes the only unrecorded craft a pair of hands can own. Not surrender, craft. Motion that belongs to timing, breath that never pays a tax. Entries accrue, names docketed, weights of cane and cotton, weights of bone and hour, set beneath an eye trained to call itself benevolent. The mistress wears iron like lace. The overseer wears figures like faith. The book sits pleased with symmetry and waits for a signature to make the world seem clean. Hinges nod in rehearsal. Lamps smoke when asked. Doors keep their lesson. The ground, older than law, remembers what ink forgets and holds it where rain cannot erase. He works close, a domestic shadow who pours water, trims wicks, and leaves no echo. He moves through rooms like a margin where truth survives, narrow and necessary. Two small fires live behind his eyes from a rain day at the levee. A brother auctioned while the river pretended it did not hear, and a mother's shawl left on a nail when the wagon jerked too fast for hands to save it. Those embers keep time under the ribs, steady, unspent. The cane's tap writes its rhythm into the plank and into the flesh that must obey. Tap, breath, tap, step. A metronome for a creed that will not name itself. On a shelf, a laudanum bottle waits, brown glass as calm as winter water, the label a promise and a price. Pain has its portion. A receipt lists nerves as if they were a chore. The air nods and does not heal. The prayer here is measured and unastonished by harm. In such quiet, names are kept under the tongue. They are counted like beans in a pocket. A little arithmetic that belongs to no overseer. Windows watch. Doors pretend not to. Hinges hold their remark. A shawl thread lives in his palm like a vein. When the lamp lowers and the room returns to itself, memory steps from the margin onto the page and stands where ink cannot touch it. Outside, The ground keeps listening and writes what feet cannot say. A harvest table is promised, and the quarters hear it in flour spared from the barrel and pork salted with careful hands. The sick say the air is wrong and show salt clumping in the dish as proof. At the well, a child sings that a window must not watch after sundown. Boots are left by doors. Hinges are taught new manners with oil. Doors learn to hold light as a palm holds water, shivering but keeping it. The mistress reads receipt cures for fever and nerves, smoothing paper that wants to be believed. Laudanum for the night that fears itself. Paregoric to slow the gut that won't obey. Turpentine for fevers that act like fires and must be argued down. Lavender as a polite lie of gentility, a better room imagined inside this one. The overseer keeps his private dose and calls it prudence. The rest receive the bite, the burning reassurance of something done. Rumor moves quicker than medicine and breathes easier. It carries lamp oil and fear. It lives beneath door jambs where wind learns the room's true name. Someone says a neighbor's guilt was weighed and found too costly, so the ledger slept, and justice counted only what paid. Someone says a woman drank what was written and never woke clean. The rhyme at the well becomes rule. Do not let the window see. Do not let the door complain. Count to 12 before opening your mouth. The ground receives these steps and stores them like seed. Light thins. Cough rags darken and are folded inward. Receipts stain at the corners as if touched by damp fingers that have no cure to show. Doors bear the weight of eyes. Windows thicken with their own reflection and feign ignorance. Hinges, obedient, decide silence is the only grammar that does not lie. Names settle lower in the mouth. Counting grows patient. The house smells faintly of iron and rain, not yet fallen. The ground remembers and does not warn. In the sick room, light thins and behaves, keeping to the edges like a careful child, and the spoon learns how to count without clinking, laying drops like coins into a small treasury that never pays the debt. Sweat writes numbers across a brow the ledger cannot balance, and the walls bow with listening before straightening, as if scolded into posture by the quiet. The door rests 3/4 closed and holds there, as though a hand were still upon it, asking it to mind the breath inside. Thin lamplight becomes a lesson. It bends. It obliges. It refuses to tell the truth out loud. The receipts darken at the corners and refuse to heal by being read. A boy's jaw flutters like wire in wind. A field hand presses salt into a plate and studies how it cakes, calls it a sign the sky would understand. The answer he is given is work. Yield is the doctrine here, even when the body cannot hold the crop. The word malingering walks through the room in hard heels, and the floorboards do not answer. Paregoric murmurs. Turpentine bites. Lavender pretends that gentility can cool a fever by name alone. The spoon continues its coin count as if mercy could be counted too, and found exact. Hinges begin a new dialect, oiled, slowed, courteous. They lower their voices until voice is only breath. The night teaches the ear to write without ink, to take the room down in quiet script on the inside of the skull. The watchful door keeps its sliver of sight and does not blink. Receipts lie open like psalms no one chooses, pages a little damp with the weather of hands. On the sill, a moth pays with its dust and is forgiven. Drops are counted, then hours, then the gap between them. The lamp rehearses its own dimming and is permitted to remain. The salt in the dish does not forget what it became when air touched it. Names settle under tongues, where talk cannot requisition them. The house smells faintly of iron, as if rain had tried the latch and deferred. The ground remembers and, like the hinge, withholds its remark. He gathers what the night will understand, a razor with its narrow horizon, a line that can be drawn without boasting, a strip of linen, plain as a river's back, ready to be folded into current, a loose bed screw, iron patient as an argument already decided, a match head, sulfur, tucked under a thumbnail like a small sun under vow. Each object is renamed by need and waits upon a quiet altar of wood, parishioners before a hymn that has not begun. Nothing is hurried. Even purpose learns to breathe between its words. The calendar offers an alibi. A holiday loosens the gaze of those who measure. A moonless span gives the sky a lid. The house exhales for celebration and forgets its stricter manners. The keys in a pocket drowse like old teeth, trusting gums to keep them. He maps the room with his body. From washstand to bed, 7. From window to the hall, 5. From door to the stair, 9. He notes the floorboard that remembers feet too well, the rug that forgives. The hinge receives oil with gratitude and warning. If speech is required, whisper. If whisper is possible, forget. The razor learns restraint. It comes to the cloth and lays a single thought down the grain. The linen learns to keep no shape, but the one need gives it. When pulled, it will turn to river without drama. The iron screw understands its silence is the best oath it can make. The match head carries its sulfur like a prayer in the mouth. Not yet. Not yet. Breath becomes liturgy. 12 for the ones taken. 3 for the ones unborn. 1 for the name hidden in the back of the throat, like a seed saved from last year's row. Outside, the packed earth keeps the weight of tonight's steps separate from all other weights, a new page folded into the older book. Inside, quilts hold their winter, walnut posts hold their years, and the lamp bends without failing. The door leans in, interested, then leans back to pretend to sleep. The room receives the tokens as a chapel receives its congregation, spare, solemn, grateful for the order of small things. Air turns cool and exact. Time slows to hear itself. The ground remembers, and the memory waits under the step, soft even in good weather. Candles set a map across the quilt, small coins laid on stitched fields, and each coin buys a second in which silence can decide. The breeze at the doorjamb argues, then concedes to oil and intent, shouldering its way back into the larger dark. A hymn fragment wanders in from another room and forgets its words before the refrain, leaving only the shape of comfort without its promise. The bed makes itself patient. The walnut posts stand like elders who have learned when counsel is a sin. Elsewhere, a man bragged and slept free after all charges were weighed and set down, and the ledger learned to drowse from the example. Justice counts what pays. Mercy is the column no one totals. The page prefers its own symmetry to any human noise and takes pride in the balance of its lines. Here now, candlelight agrees to be counted. The quilt agrees to hold its pattern without complaint. The iron bedbolts think about age and decide not to speak. Cloth is tested with a wrist. The wrist returns a verdict. Yes. Breath is braided to hinge breath, then to rain breath farther off. In, out, delay, release. The door holds its oath to be still. The window thickens into a mirror that politely declines to watch. Names tilt forward in the mouth and wait there like beads at the end of a rosary that has learned how to be handled in the dark. The room, hand by hand, piece by piece, aligns its furniture to the hour coming. Measured breath becomes the only clock that means. The lamp bows. The rug forgives a wait. A spoon on the table practices being quiet and is praised for it by absence alone. Outside, the ground lays its ear against the house and listens as it has always listened, knowing what will be told will not be told in words. In this accord, wood, cloth, oil, iron, nothing asks to be seen. The bed learns wait, and learning, decides to hold rather than remark. The house accepts this decision as if it were the one it had chosen for itself. The act is litany, not thunder. Steel learns restraint and draws a rule across air, exact but unsung. Cloth learns river, takes a path that is quiet because many throats have taught it how. The mouth is an unlit lamp containing heat without display. Each pull, each press, is married to a name the ledger refused. Names are spoken within breath. Bean count quiet, so that no paper can quote them later and claim them as proof. The counting is a spine. It keeps the body from folding. The window keeps its glass and becomes a wall. The door chooses to be a wall as well. The room holds its breath until time shifts its stance to keep balance. There are no cries, only the insistence of a ritual that has appeared before, in other rooms, on nights when the sky sat with its light turned away. A matchhead sleeps in a thumb and waits for its small day. Sulfur knows patience. Linen returns to the hand and becomes cloth again, no pride in it, no shame. Names complete their procession and stand a moment shoulder to shoulder inside the chest, present and seen. The ledger, elsewhere, sleeps on. The lamp lowers to a thought and does not go out, because this requires attention, but not theater. The door remembers it is a threshold and, for now, refuses to be anything but a line. The window holds glass and does not record breath. The ground under the bed takes the weight and keeps it, gentle, like a page slipped beneath the others for safekeeping. Fire remains patient, a housed thing, until it is asked to speak. It is not yet its hour. The counting stops because it has arrived. Silence returns with its shoulders squared. The room exhales once, then waits, then keeps waiting, as if to learn what kind of night it has become. Nothing announces. Nothing begs. The Hinges' new dialect says nothing at all. The air remembers the smell of oil and iron and recognizes both as old friends who have come to watch without being seen. The ground remembers. It always does. Flame is given not as spectacle, but as cover, a bedside psalm that reads itself to the ceiling, while smoke writes a sentence that curls and erases itself before any docket can learn its grammar. The cup on the stand does not spill. The teaspoon rests and dreams it is a bell that can call or release without making a sound. The quilt tightens its pattern and then forgets, as if cloth can choose what it refuses to remember. Outside, rain thinks about coming and decides to wait at the edge of the field. Low flame learns patience. It moves along the hem like a modest pen, and the scorched iron smell rises from bedbolts as if tools have come to witness, restrained and sorrowing. The window refuses to draft. It keeps its glass the way a mouth keeps a secret, and the heat presses a brief hand against the pain that no one will inherit. A hinge in the hall listens to air and declines to comment. The door keeps being a wall and receives no praise for the discipline. What the room knows, it knows without end. Smoke thins and folds into rafters like an old story trying on a new coat, and the ceiling nods once, as if to mark the passage of a sentence without taking it down. The teaspoon's bell dream is not unkind. Bells are for summons and for farewells, and this is a kind of both. The lamp bows its wick, then holds. The ground waits for ash to settle and adds it to an older archive, a page without ink that nobody can blot and nobody can rearrange. Winter's sharp words arrive, and the book writes property and loss with the same hand, admiring its own straightness, while breath pays the cost unseen. Testimony is sifted until only the wind's chosen side can travel. The room holds a stair with windows that do not blink. Docket lines stand like cane after frost, rigid and done. The iron pen scratches, pleased with its own cold authority. Elsewhere, overseers walked away from charges, while owners argued only wages lost, and forgetting, learned to dress itself as policy. Names are turned to instruments, bodies to entries, silence to compliance. Seals stamp down the margins until the page looks perfect and talks of balance as if balance were justice. Beneath, the ground accepts new footsteps and files them beside older ones that meant the same, patient as sediment. Ink dries, and the book announces that a witness is unnecessary because the book has written. The hinge on the court's door never learned a kinder dialect and will not begin now. Outside, weather carries on. Inside, a clerk straightens sheets and delights in how paper obeys. Law sleeps on its side and dreams of order. Names retreat to the one place they cannot be taxed, the mouth that refuses to release them. The ground remembers and does not edit. Years pass until rope turns into weather, and a charred bedbolt ends in a trunk beside a handkerchief that smells faintly of oil. At the well, children sing a rule about doors not squeaking and windows not watching after the angel's hour, and older ones nod, recognizing a catechism that names without naming. Heels count dust into ceremony, and the ground by the steps stays soft, even in good sun, as if it held a word it cannot pronounce. The rhyme survives without faces. Hinges are tended more than necessary. Oil arrives like a blessing that asks no questions. Door frames are rubbed until they feel like old shoulders. Windows learn to blink at the right time. When the trunk is opened, iron and cloth breathe once and return to their rest. A thin trace rises, lamp oil, a cool hint of rain, linen dried too fast, and the room holds its breath in respect. The ground takes the new heel count and sets it beside the old, one more quiet entry in the ledger without ink. Evening lays a thin gold ring on a cup's rim, and the hallway keeps two folded shadows, as if wood could archive breath. This is not revenge. It is a weight returned to a leaning scale and set down with no triumph and no applause. Windows choose to close and call it dignity. Hinges forget to creak and are blessed with oil. The house resumes its angle as if nothing had moved, though the air wears a new seam. The ground remembers, and the memory smells like iron and rain. Walk with us into future investigations, if these quiet rooms still call. Tap like so this small flame keeps. Share so the hush can cross to other houses. Subscribe to be told when another door eases open. And in the comments, leave one word: listening or remembering. So the ledger of witness knows a presence stood here